Black Ops 6 Zombies is releasing in just under 2 weeks, and there is still so much to discuss. From the gameplay mechanics to the new Gobblegum system to the Liberty Falls overhaul recently that was announced on the COD pod, we have a lot to get through, and so I thought it would be best to bring in somebody who is pretty familiar with Call of Duty and who has actually been on the Call of Duty podcast himself, Mr. Dalek JD. Let's jump right into it. So what was it like being on the COD pod? What was that experience like? I'd like to know a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. I'm so happy you asked this question as well, because like when you see the COD pod, it obviously looks like a certain way, like it's all set up. You've got sofas, mics, like I'm just there. But like the process behind that and what it was like is like I got messaged by Activision maybe 2-3 weeks before, and they were like, we have an opportunity for you. I'm like, okay. How would you like to be the first guest on the COD pod? And I'm like, oh my God, like how have I ended up being the very first guest? Like surely there's more interesting, bigger creators that are, you know, multiplayer or Warzone focused that have like potentially more influence, more people that are watching like a COD stream would just know who they are. Why did they pick me? But I'm like, this is really cool. So I said, of course, like I'm really interested in getting involved. Mentioned that Kevin Drew is going to be on there. So I'm like, oh wow, this is like a zombies focused podcast, and there's not really been like a zombie focused conversation with devs since like BO3 or BO4. So I'm like, this is a really like cool big opportunity. But yeah, going into context on like the day of what that was like. So like I was given like maybe a day or two beforehand where we went to the venue before COD Next to sort of like tech test the set up OBS, get the scenes how you'd have it as a normal stream if you're doing it at home, getting the levels if you were doing local recordings, basically all the technical backgrounds of what YouTubers do but have set up so they don't ever need to worry about it. Then you're thrown onto like a completely alien machine and you're like, okay, I need to set this all up again. And basically like, oh, at some point we need to talk to you about the COD pod and sort of timings and what's going on. That conversation just never happened. I think everyone was just so busy. So we did our COD Next streams. For context, that was like about midday Eastern time that happened. They didn't finish till about 4:30 p.m. So, you know, if you've ever done a live stream for a good 4 or 5 hours, you're talking a lot, giving a lot of energy. You're pooped. Yeah, you're pooped. You're a little bit tired. I only had I didn't even really have breakfast that day. It was mostly just like energy drinks, typical.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just to get you energized and like a few snacks here and there. I didn't even eat lunch. Finish the stream. I get up and Activision PR are like, hey, we want you to do a thing for the social channels for Call of Duty UK, like a fun little red flag, green flag thing. I'm like, okay, cool. And then after that, they're like, okay, I want you to do this as well. And then after that, then it was the COD pod. So for context, watching it, I had not eaten in like 7-8 hours, not really had any fluids for like 7-8 hours. I was pooped, but I had to muster the energy to not look pooped. And I think I actually carried it really well.
I 100% agree with you. I know that there's always going to be those people in the comments that are like, why didn't he ask like the most specific question about the specific Easter egg on like, and just kind of
I completely get that, and I actually agree, but I think it's really difficult to say that and not be in the position of actually being there in the room where they have like 5-6 cameras on you. There's studio lights, you've got microphones, and there's also other people watching and listening whilst you're doing the podcast in case someone says something that like isn't allowed to be said. They're like, well, you're gonna have to cut that and you're gonna have to redo that sentence or whatever. So like, I do get it. And it's always a case of like, once you do something like that, you're like, damn, I wish I asked this question, or damn, I wish I asked that question. But for some additional context, I did actually have a notes of probably about 20 questions that I wanted to ask, some which I think the community would have really liked me to ask, but they just weren't really relevant to the like main discussion of
how it was going.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to be that guy that's just going to start saying stuff that's not relevant, and they're like, you got to cut that, you got to cut this, got to cut that. So I just tried to interweave what I felt was relevant that I could say. But yeah, like maybe later on we could maybe delve into what I had written down and see if people listening go, yeah, I wish you asked that question, or like, dude, that's such a dumb question, I'm glad you didn't ask that, sort of thing.
No, I mean, I would love to know more about that. I actually have a question later in the episode, just kind of what are some things you'd really like to see added or removed. So when we get to that part, I'm gonna make a note.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I actually think you did a really good job. I think because you asked about Gobblegums, you asked about like the Liberty Falls kind of in what the devs were thinking about what Liberty Falls was supposed to be.
Yeah, 100%.
And that was kind of like, in my opinion, it was like a little bit of a hardcore question. Like, hey, what are Gobblegums? What do they look like? What's coming down the pipeline? Which is kind of a gameplay centered question. And then you kind of asked a broader question. And I totally agree with you. Like I've worked in production for a long time. It's so different when you're actually sitting on the couch. It's so easy to be an armchair quarterback and critique everybody on screen. I used to be the biggest armchair quarterback, so I've been on both sides of that. But what I thought was interesting is something you kind of highlighted a second ago, was that it was a zombies focused kind of podcast, I guess you could say. At least a third of it was with you and Kevin Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that? What do you think that means? I know that I'm kind of getting deep here, but like you said, that hasn't really been done since BO4, BO3. Do you think that means Activision and Treyarch are really going to be pushing zombies in a way we haven't seen since those eras?
I would like to think so. Like again, it did catch me by surprise that they wanted me there for like a zombie specific thing. Like I think they always plan to have Kevin Drew as the guest, because there's been one more COD pod since then, and it also had a Treyarch dev that was more focused on story. So I assume they're probably just going to rotate around that sort of thing. But yeah, I would like to think that they are focusing a little bit more this year on at least having zombies be a little bit more serious in that conversation. And when I got offered that, obviously I was like so stoked that they offered it to me. But I also did ask them, like, hey, is there any room for a interview with Kevin one-on-one that isn't the COD pod? Like, we've got cameras there, the mics are set up. Yeah. Like, let's do that. And unfortunately, that wasn't possible because, and this is just like the backgrounds that even I'm still learning about with like these sort of events, that like these developers, they're being yoinked in all sorts of different directions to have interviews with like this media outlet, and then they go off for this media outlet, and then they're talking to this newspaper and this TV broadcast station or something like that. So like the schedule just didn't align where that was possible, which is a real shame, because if there was any event that could have happened, it would have been that one. That would have been sick. I'd love to see going forward that they take it more serious, because I mean the days of the Blundell interviews were fantastic, and I think like that's just a great way to have a connection with the community, where it's not just these 30-second short form clips. Like we actually have a little bit more involvement and an opportunity for the community to get involved and ask those like hardcore questions, like you said. Like again, I really wanted to try and get a balance of being able to ask questions which are sensible, that I know they will answer, but also maybe just try and push the lever slightly, but not too much. Like I wasn't going to sit there and be like, hey, Kevin, so Zombie Chronicles 2, what's your opinions on that, eh? Because I just know that wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think this Kevin Drew era, or whatever you want to call it, it feels like it's still blossoming, because with Blundell, and I mean even in the IW days, like I feel like each of the developers kind of had their own fun, cheeky way of interacting with the community, and it feels like Kevin Drew is still kind of figuring that out. But I like that he's taking his own approach. Like he seems to be super transparent with us when he can speak.
Yep.
It's clear that he's more focused on accessibility, which I do have my qualms about, but
I think everyone does in certain ways.
I know, and I want people to play zombies. I do, but I miss that more of a challenge. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. I guess my question to you is like, what do you feel about this Kevin Drew's era? I'm not asking you to like, talk bad about the guy. I want to know, like, what do you like about his maps, his direction, and how do you feel about that kind of revealing itself to be a little on the easier side, a little bit on the less atmospheric side with Liberty Falls. And how do you think their response shows that they're listening to the community?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think because we've got to take in consideration that Kevin Drew's been at Treyarch for a really long time.
True.
Like he's not just appeared out of nowhere. He's worked on like certain Black Ops 1 campaigns. He worked on Mob of the Dead in Black Ops 2. He did Zetsubo no Shima, Ancient Evil, and Black Ops 4. Like he's that's one of his babies. He loves that. And now he's kind of more aligned to like the gameplay systems in Cold War. Like I think we can all agree that yeah, with this Kevin era, the game is a lot easier, and there is definitely some negatives to that, but there's also potentially some positives as well. Like I don't think it's all necessarily bad. Like I think Donuts made a fantastic video showcasing why armor plates are not necessarily the worst thing in zombies, and why it's also not just a war zone element, by explaining that like as the games have gotten easier, some of the zombies themselves and the bosses, they don't necessarily do like a significant amount of damage that they used to do, where in games like Black Ops 3, like the Margwa, it can one hit down you without Juggernog. And like if that existed now, I reckon people would struggle even more so.
Yeah,
and it's also very eye-opening, and depending on when you post this, I have a very interesting video to post where I'm actually going to carry 3 complete noobs through Shadows of Evil. Like we complete the Easter egg, and it's eye-opening because some of them are Warzone players, and they're trying to grasp the concept of even like they get a shopping free, and I go open all the doors, and they're like, where are the doors? And then when they do open doors, they go into certain districts. Some of the bits that are beast mode zap boxes, they're like, how do I open this? There's no prompt to open it. And I'm like, you've got much to learn, my friend. And like stuff with the Margwas. There's so many like small things that you don't necessarily think about that nowadays a lot of casual players would just not be able to grasp the concept of. Like a Margwa, you need to have distance from it so that its mouth opens, and so you have distance enough to continue to shoot its mouth to inflict damage. That's something that even after like 2 hours, some of the guys in the game still didn't understand the concept of, and they kept going down because they were right next to a Margwa. So it's kind of things like that that we will never ever consider or think about, because we just know how to deal with certain scenarios. But some players, I guess, things like that, like if Shadows of Evil came out now, I reckon we would love it, but the more casual players that might be interested in zombies would really struggle to like it, because it's so rough and hard in terms of the complexity of everything and the difficulty and the damage. So it's a tough one. I think it's a balancing act that I still don't think Treyarch have really gotten perfect yet. We are yet to see if Black Ops 6 will be the game that has that perfect balance of it being more approachable, but still has that difficulty curve. But I guess you can also look at it as in like, if the game comes out and it is way too easy, it's not to say that the game's cooked and it will forever be easy, because it's like you look at Black Ops 4 that launched with a 3-hit down, and something as like big as that changing within a week is not something I don't think anyone expected to happen. And I know it's as simple as just, this difficulty mode has a 4-hit. They're just going to, move it over like scale it like that. But it's like, that's still quite a big change to make within a week of the game launching. And there is a chance that things like that could happen with BO6. And Shadows of Evil had drastic changes from its launch. Like pre-launch, it was really, really difficult. And some of those things were quite substantial, and they're all changed. So it's an interesting one, and I'd like to think that they've made and learned lessons from Cold War to hopefully get that balance. Because so far they've said that the Easter egg quests are going to be more difficult than Cold War, and they say the game's going to be more difficult than Cold War. But then the Liberty Falls gameplay, obviously, I got to around 40 something. Duke Dennis got to around 50 plus. Clearly, there's still a little bit of work to be done, but I think that might be due to just how strong the jet gun was. I think if you had that same scenario but had no wonder weapon, I don't think people would have gotten as far, simply because the guns wouldn't be as good as the jet gun. And I think Kevin Drew he might have said it on the podcast, might have not, but he maybe might nerf the jet gun a little bit.
Okay.
He said that it potentially might be too strong. And I was like,
that's interesting.
Please don't.
Okay.
Please don't change it.
Yeah, I like that. I kind of like that the jet gun is OP. I mean, as long as the rest of the systems are balanced, I think that's okay. Because, like, think about the Apothecant Servant. I mean, that thing literally sucks zombies to the depths of hell, and you can just stand in a corner. It's fun to have, you know, those OP things. I just think that, like, you're bringing up Shadows. It's very interesting to hear the newbies' perspective. I'm definitely gonna watch that video.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one.
What's curious to me though is like, and I'm going to project myself out to the world here. When I started playing zombies in World at War, and then I missed out on BO1 and BO2, and then I joined back in BO3, and I remember loading up Shadows for the first time, and I was like, this is so awesome. But I had no idea what was going on. I didn't even know there was a zombies community. And my friend and I, we were trying to like figure out how to open up Pack-a-Punch. We had no idea what the hell was going on. We were so confused, but we just kept coming back. We were like, this is so sick. I want to be in this world. I want to be in this land of Shadows of Evil. It's so cool. And then somehow I stumbled upon the Smith Plays like ultimate guide video. And then I started opening up Pack-a-Punch. And it took me to like round 15 or 16 to get there. But I just couldn't get enough. And that's the kind of element from the casual perspective that I don't really understand. It's like that was the fun part to me, was getting over those hurdles, was to figure out how to, was taking me 15, 16 rounds to open up Pack-a-Punch and being on the skin of my teeth, the edge of my seat the whole time to now I can open it up by like round 4 or whatever, you know? So it's just figuring out how to optimize and get better and learn those mechanics. That's what I find so compelling about zombies, is mastering the map, taking what was once so difficult and just mastering it. And I don't quite understand, and again, this is just my preference, why so many people want a more casual is not the right word. And I don't want to say they want it to be easier either. It just maybe more streamlined.
Maybe a
little bit more simplistic. Yeah, something like that. And it's not to judge, because I do get the mentality of just jumping into the giant and just killing some zombies. I like to do that as well. But that adventure of Shadows of Evil, the music, like when you see the Shadow Man pop up down in the, you know, underground area where Pack-a-Punch is, it's so epic. And it's just, I miss that. I just miss that. And when I saw Liberty Falls, I wasn't necessarily upset or anything. I was just like, man, I was really hoping for more. I was hoping for map evolution or levolution. The Gaming Revolution and I were talking about that on the episode. And I know that they said on the COD pod that it was that the devs were listening, but it was kind of always. They gave the idea that it was kind of planned that the devs were going to be tweaking Liberty Falls. I don't actually think that was the case. I think they saw the feedback from the community and they're like, crap. I think we need to change some things. But this kind of leads me to say, like, do you think? Sorry, I'm kind of figuring out how I want to structure this question.
You go for it, man. You go for it.
When it comes to BO6. I think I could handle a little bit more simplistic of maps in the gameplay realm if they brought back that rich artistic level design, like Ancient Evil, Dead of the Night, Blood of the Dead, Origins, whatever. That those maps felt like you were on an adventure. And even if Liberty Falls was a little bit easier, I still don't feel that adventurous development. And I know there's the church, but it just doesn't have that same vibe. Like, what do you kind of think about that? Do you care about atmosphere and art direction as much as I do, or am I just kind of simping for it?
No, I definitely do appreciate and love and care for that sort of thing as well. I think that the issue with Liberty Falls is like straight up, I think the best thing they could have done is just been openly transparent before showing the map and being like, hey guys, just a heads up, this map is several months out of date from the current build that is currently in development. So things are going to look a little, not unfinished, but like there's more work to be done on the map, just to like set the expectations, because I think it is kind of still obvious that clearly it was an unfinished version of the game. Like clearly it was like a beta build. We're playing the beta build of multiplayer. But I think if they just specified that more, I think the reaction probably would have been a lot less heated than it was. But I do completely agree with you that that era of art design, the world building, like just the unique feeling of being in like a completely separate thing that almost doesn't even feel like you're still playing Call of Duty, like it's completely separate. Yeah. That's something that, it's always been like one of the draws of COD Zombies, where it's like, it just feels so different, but in like the best way possible. And yeah, no, I completely agree. When it comes to Liberty Falls, you don't really get that feeling whatsoever. I can appreciate, and I'm happy to sort of wait and see what the launch version of the map looks like when it comes to the atmosphere changes, which they've announced. And again, I don't know when exactly you're going to post this. That this might be before or after we've seen exactly what they've changed. But I'd like to hope that with that feedback, they've made some pretty significant changes to the mood and the atmosphere, and hopefully with the Easter egg, at least when it comes to like the dark ether aspects with the church, I'd love to see that leak out into the whole map.
Me too.
Like it's
me too.
Like one of the coolest things about D Machine was that you could go in the dark ether and the entire skybox was different. It was so sick to see that transformation like happen almost in real time. Like you barely notice how, I couldn't even tell you how Treyarch actually did that unless they just have two versions of the map that's like always active for you to teleport between, and that's how they do it. But I'm like really surprised they never really went further with that concept. Obviously, Modern Warfare Zombies, we've kind of got these dark ether rifts, which kind of are like that, but they're not quite the same. Like, yeah, it just felt really underwhelming that it's like, oh, you buy the church and the thing just opens and you go in. Like,
I know that bummed me out.
Surely there's going to be like some sort of Easter egg or some sort of objective that you need to do in the main like map before that opens, and then. Because, yeah, just buying it with points and it just being like that. Because, again, everyone's like, oh, it's the Berry Church. And it's like, it's not. it's just a normal random church. But, yeah, I'm like, the thing is, like, what you're saying with Liberty Falls, I think is completely valid. However, I think with Terminus, and again, the issue is they didn't really talk too much about it. There's only the gameplay that certain YouTubers got sent to be able to upload. Outside of that, there's been no other like looks, no live gameplay. That to me is very much more aligned to what you're talking about a feeling and like a mood and a world that you're in. I can't say now if it's going to be on the same level as like the old maps in terms of what kept drawing you in, but like Terminus is 100 times more interesting as a world and environment than Liberty Falls, no doubt.
Okay, that I was actually going to follow up with that. So I'm glad you answered it. That's what it appears to me. It does look like Terminus has a lot more to offer, and I know they're talking about there's going to be more Easter eggs and side Easter eggs than ever before. But did you feel that the way that, and I know you played this a while ago, so but do you feel like the way that you kind of navigated through Terminus from the moment you spawned in till, I don't know how far you guys got, maybe around 20 or 30 or something like that. Did you feel that there was that sense of progression kind of like in the older maps where you start, I don't know, like in Zetsubo, you kind of grab the buckets, you're unlocking power, you go underwater, you know, there's like that, those little sense of that sense of progression that gets you through Pack-a-Punch or to the early phases of the map. Did you feel that at all, or were you just kind of killing zombies? I
definitely felt that. Yeah. I don't know if the gameplay that they gave us made it very clear, but the progression of the map is obviously you start in that like cell block, you open up, there's arrows leading you to power. The map's quite dark and gloomy. And there's 3 different sort of like mini power machines that you have to activate. And whilst they're like going from 0 to 100 progress bar, zombies are spawning, trying to attack it. And you need to do that for 3 machines around the map. So there's one on the left, one on the right, and then sort of one towards the middle of the map. And then once you've got them open, then you progress through one of those towers that you see in the gameplay B-roll that leads to the caves, that then go through the caves and then into that sort of like power lab area. I think, yeah, that the third one is there, and that gameplay shows it where they activate it. It spawns a ton of zombies.
Yes.
That progression is there. 100% is there. Compared to Liberty Falls, where there is literally nothing. It's just opening doors, and then woo, you get to a church and a door gets you to Pack-a-Punch. This map, there is actually like actual progression and things you need to do in order to get to Pack-a-Punch. It's not just simply opening doors, which is great.
Okay.
But obviously, once past that point, obviously everything was disabled, so there wasn't anything really clear on what to do. But once you get to that point, obviously, naturally, the next part is either you get on the Pack-a-Punch, which is available for you, sort of rises off a platform. And there's like a lever that can send it to the top of the map, so it's outside rather than underground. And you can keep switching between, like you can activate a button for it the Pack-a-Punch to move up and down. So depending if everyone is either underground or above ground and people want the Pack-a-Punch like accessible like really quick, they can call it and it moves on like a little conveyor belt thing, which is really cool.
I don't think any of you guys have said that.
Oh, I thought that sort of made a little bit clear, because you see it when the player finishes the third generator thing, it switches to another player's perspective where they are on top of the Pack-a-Punch platform as it's rising out the water, and then it sort of stays there. And then I think later on in the footage, when the amalgam spawns and they're fighting it, I'm pretty sure they take it down right around the corner from where that Pack-a-Punch platform would be on the top of the map. So maybe
I'm gonna have to watch it again.
Yeah.
Well, no, I noticed. I knew it was up and down. I thought it was just like hidden, and then it revealed itself when you guys activated it. I didn't know it could you could move it to multiple locations. That's pretty sick.
I could be wrong in terms of it being a manual, like you call it and it comes up, or it just periodically moves. Because I remember sometimes when I played, the Pack-a-Punch was on top, and then other times it was below. And I couldn't really work out if someone was doing that or if it was just moving by itself. But like that Pack-a-Punch area on the top of the map, that is a massive choke point for zombies. Like multiple players when I was playing were going down because they were Pack-a-Punching in the round, whilst there were dozens of zombies spawning, trying to attack them, and they were going down on the platform. And then if the platform's moving, then that's another like, oh no, what the heck am I going to do? I now have to try and race down underground to meet it to try and revive them in time. So that's what
I like to hear.
Yeah, so that was kind of fun. And then outside of that, obviously you have the boat, which you can call at multiple places around the map. I think in one of the gameplays, a character is like fighting zombies and then they jump in the water as someone's driving the boat towards them. But yeah, naturally the progression would be you then get the boat and you've got that boat outside of the main playable area that you can get on, and there's certain wall buys and other things. And I think Codename Pete's has mentioned that there are some secret rooms towards the back of the boat. I never got to experience that.
Yeah.
And there's the massive island where you see the gameplay where they're shooting parasites. From the screenshots, it looks like there's like another area that seems to be the other side of the bottom of the map where it's fully on water. We didn't see that. From what I know from other people that played it, you can't get too far out of the map with the boat. Like there is like a pretty quick boundary part where it's like you cannot go there or you're out of bounds sort of thing. But it looks like that boat will easily give you maybe 2 to 3 minutes of just gameplay of just being able to go around the map in a circle. Like that's how long it would probably take. So yeah, really, really cool. And then obviously you've got the amalgams later on. I think they're more like a mid round 15 onwards sort of thing.
Such a cool boss. Were they did you feel like they were balanced or fun to fight, or what did they feel like to interact with?
They felt pretty strong, but when I played, and again, it's a long time, so I'm trying to remember, but I played with 3 people who aren't necessarily zombies players. So some of the other mechanics, like upgrading your weapon's rarity, they didn't know the concept of that or understand how to do that. And then obviously Pack-a-Punch, they pack-a-punched once, but they couldn't afford to pack-a-punch twice, and some perks didn't have. So like I was sort of carrying. But from what I remember, yeah, they were quite tough. I mean, from the footage that they'd given us, they sort of looked like a bit of a bullet sponge. But I think it really also depends what weapon you're using, what rarity, what pack-a-punch at that point. But from what I remember on how much things costed, like the armor war buys and stuff, and the pack-a-punch and then the perks, I feel like the progression in the game is a little bit of a longer one than Cold War, where it felt like you have very quickly had everything set up by maybe like round 20, round 25. I feel like this is at least at 5, if not 10 rounds more that you're going to need to go through before you'll have everything maxed out.
That's interesting. Because that's actually one of the reasons I like Black Ops 4 so much. Black Ops 4 Zombies is my favorite. I know I'm not the average person there.
I saw your tweets about it when it turned 6 years old. I was like, well, yeah, he's a big fan of Black Ops 4. Dude,
I love it so much. I just love that whole era, and we could dive into that in a whole other podcast. It really was special. I feel like some of the gameplay mechanics obviously fell flat, but I loved it a lot. But the thing about it that I liked was it extended the Easter egg. It kind of pushed you into the later rounds to do the Easter egg. So like
that's true.
Typically in like Black Ops 3, you could get an Easter egg done, I don't know, rounds 15, 16. There wasn't a ton of steps, but like if you think about 9, even if you're having a great game, you're probably starting the boss fight at around
30,
round 27, 30. Yeah. At like early if you're good enough. And I really, really enjoyed that. And so since Cold War, I try to like flip it in my mind without like the progression in Cold War and stuff. They wanted to extend that longevity in the gameplay element. So like Black Ops 4, you were probably fully set up by round 10 or 12, just like any other game. But now it seems like they want to push that further with the gameplay. And it's kind of a reversal in my head that I haven't quite learned to accept. But I think that's good news. If it takes a few rounds longer to get set up, hopefully that pushes us along further in the Easter egg as well. Because I think if they kind of took the atmospheric elements from BO4 and BO3 with the gameplay from Cold War, made it a little bit more difficult, but then kind of added that elongation in the Easter egg department, I think that would give players the illusion that Easter eggs were more challenging just because the game becomes more challenging. Because if you think about it, in 9, when you have to like put the fertilizer on that step in the Danu area, like that step's not hard. You just set some poop down and hold square or whatever you have to do, and it transports you to another area. The only reason it's challenging is because it's about round 17 and zombies are all around you in this tight space. So it's just really about how you like understand gameplay mechanics. And so I'm really hoping that the push into the further to the later rounds make the gameplay feel harder than it actually is. But it seems like, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, it feels like Terminus is a lot more fleshed out than Liberty Falls. And I don't know if you remember this interview. I don't know if it was with you or not. Forgive me for not remembering. But Blundell did an interview with either you or Pizza or Noah, and he was talking about how they had the Margwas tuned pretty early into development, but it took them a while to get the pests. They couldn't figure out how to balance the pests quite right. And that actually is analogous to Terminus and Liberty Falls. It feels like Terminus is really dialed, really figured out, but Liberty Falls is like the pest. It's like it's that smaller side map that they haven't really dialed in. Now they're changing atmosphere. Maybe they're going to tune the difficulty. Do you think that's fair to say? Like Terminus is a little bit more figured out than Liberty Falls, or do you think there's things they want to change or update?
I would say from what's been revealed to us, like the information given, I think that's a fair thing to say. But it's because like Terminus has been described as one of the biggest round-based zombies maps they've ever made, and it's going to have the most side Easter eggs that you've ever seen in a single zombies map, even rivaling Shadows of Evil. I mean, when you give accolades as like strong as that, it is so hard for anything to follow that up, let alone launch alongside it. But I think the fact that they haven't outright specified those sorts of things for Liberty Falls, I guess, doesn't help with the overall like perception of it, because like we know it has a main Easter egg quest. They've clarified that. They've clarified that there are side Easter eggs, but they've not really clarified to what extent in terms of number or magnitude or anything like that. They've not even really told us if there's going to be more areas of the map than what was shown at COD Next. I mean, it's like, again, it's an assumption that there's going to be more, but it's almost a case of like the assumption of like, well, yeah, of course there has to be more to this, right? Because the map's so small in comparison to Terminus that yeah, it kind of does feel like Terminus is definitely like a more fleshed out map, and maybe even from like the ground up in terms of like the art direction and the atmosphere and tone and like feeling. It feels definitely a lot more dialed in to be more of what you'd expect zombies to be, rather with Liberty Falls. And again, like the perception is that, oh, it's a multiplayer map that was turned into a zombies map. I don't think I've mentioned this in a video, but when I went to see Zombies at Treyarch in like late July, early August, they specified that Liberty Falls came first, and that everything about that map, the art direction, the like layout, everything about that was a zombies map first and foremost. And the multiplayer team saw it and really liked the way it looked and the atmosphere and the mood and the setting. And they wanted to create something that was set in the same sort of location that could almost exist as like a side part of this real life location, but have it as a multiplayer map. So that's what they did. Yeah. But I guess in a way, it's the fact that that's also not clarified is where that argument is. Oh, it just looks like a multiplayer map because the multiplayer map version of the map exists, but without the context behind it, you just have that basis to go off. So it's kind of like people shouldn't be at fault for going based on what's been given to them, because we just don't know everything, which is the issue. But people just go based on what they're shown, and if what they're shown is they're not happy with it, then that's kind of like, well, they are in their right to think that because they are basing it on what they've seen rather than basing it on the entire thing, which we haven't seen yet, which is like the real crux and problem with how the Liberty Falls discussion's been handled since it was revealed, which is like, yeah, it's not the full map, but it's like people are completely fair to judge it based on the small bit they have seen, because they've got no reason to believe that isn't what they're going to get because they're showing it. You know what I mean?
No, I do. Yeah. And the Liberty Falls cutscene didn't help either, or it did help depending on how you want to look at it, because it was so good.
Yeah. So like, again, like Kevin said on the stream, like how excited he was at that cutscene and how excited he was at how incredible that cutscene was
so good.
But I think something which he didn't clarify in the COD pod or like on the stream or anything like that is that, like, I guess it really comes down to like when we had this when you discussed earlier about like the sort of eras of zombies of like Blundell and Kevin Drew and stuff. I guess it's kind of like the intention of what they intend the intro cutscene to do, and the like intentions with what they've done from the Drew era so far, Cold War and Black Ops 6, is that it sets up a story, but it's not necessarily going to be accurate to the actual map experience. Like the stuff that happens in the cutscene doesn't have to align identically to the play space and characters and stuff, because this is just introing the narrative. When it's like, it's an interest.
Zetsubo.
Yeah, Zetsubo. You don't start on a boat. The characters aren't like falling off and floating in water towards the island or whatever, or Gorod Cove. You don't start the map flying in on a dragon falling from the sky. As cool as that would be, I guess it's like that
nowadays people would just be like, "Oh, that's a Warzone intro."
Yeah, exactly.
You're parachuting in. Oh, Warzone. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty funny. I still think the Zombies team is I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. I try to be I'm very critical, but I really try to make it seem like I'm not, crapping on the devs or anything, because they're a really great team of people.
Absolutely.
But I still feel like and you'll know more than me, but after BO4 was a very big transition period for Treyarch. They were ending the Ether storyline. A lot of the team left. I know even more left during Cold War and went over to Deviation, and I don't know what they're doing now, but I don't know if Treyarch has quite found their footing as with this new era, new Treyarch, whatever you want to call them. And I think that's okay. It's not always a great thing for fans because, we're the ones buying the product. But at the end of the day, I want Treyarch to find their footing. And the only way they're going to find it is by experimenting, messing up, falling flat on their face, trying things that we may or may not like. And that kind of feels like what Cold War was to me.
Yeah, no,
so
I agree.
I'm really hoping that BO6 irons some of that out. That being said, and we will eventually transition into this podcast questions because I am very curious about those. This is something I am curious about with Gobblegums. It's like we have all these Cold War systems, right? And Cold War systems were deliberately designed to not need Gobblegums. Like you had all those tiers inside of that you could unlock with ether crystals. Like for example, I think you could get Dying Wish with Juggernog, or you had self-medication inside a Quick Revive. And now we're seeing Gobblegums. And I'm wondering, like, are they even going to serve as much of a purpose as they did with Black Ops 3 or Elixirs with BO4? And just kind of curious what you think about that. You just made the video about Gobblegums, kind of explaining some things, but with the way the Cold War systems work, how do you think they're going to fare? Pros, cons, good, bad? Like, where do you fall on this spectrum?
That's a really good question because it's like, it's not something that I've thought too much about because I guess the immediate knee-jerk reaction you hear Gobblegums are back. We're like, oh my God, yes, they're listening. Oh my God. But yeah, no, when you further delve into it, you do have a great point. Some of those things, they may not necessarily need to be a Gobblegum. And I think one of the interesting decisions they've made with Gobblegum, and again, like I'm making that video recently, is something that even I didn't really realize, is that every single Gobblegum is now a consumable. They don't have infinite uses. So some of the classic gums from BO3, like In Plain Sight and Stock Option and Anywhere But Here, they are no longer infinite. They are all consumable. So they're all classed the same as like a perkaholic. Once you've used it, that's it. And I'm not sure how like sold I am on that idea, just because it's just going to feel so weird.
It is.
Like it's going to be so weird to like get used to the fact that like I can't always use an Anywhere But Here or In Plain Sight. Like I'm going to have a certain number of them and that's it. In my video, I hope that the earn rates are like different based on how rare they are. So there's a chance you'll be earning a lot more of those basic gums. Not in the sense of like you'll be earning like one of them every 2 rounds. It's more a case of like if you did earn them, rather than just earning one, the game would give you like 3 or 5. Yeah, something like that to like really balance it out. And again, we still don't even know if there's going to be microtransactions tied to Gobblegums down the line. Like they could do it where certain operator bundles will come with a pack of ultra rare gums. Or if they do a Dr. Monty's factory, but a Mr. Peak's factory where you could just straight spin them. Sounds like they don't have intentions to do that, but I would be lying if I said that I don't believe there would be some other method of getting Gobblegums added within like a month or 2 of the game.
I hope they at least have a Mr. Peak's cookbook or whatever.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Because they totally, botched that in Black Ops 4. I mean, I know we've seen the image of it.
Yeah.
And that whole, the Elixir system. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, very weird.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Like I actually like the classic Elixirs quite a bit. I think they're very balanced for how Black Ops 4 works, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, I agree with you. I hope the earn rate is catered towards the rarity of the gum, and it's not just like, oh, you have to play for 50 rounds to get 1 gum or something like that. But something, and I never thought about until I watched your video, was it is going to make every game feel pretty special and actually different. So if I have like a Perkaholic and an Anywhere But Here and an In Plain Sight, like that experience is going to be different than another game, and it actually will have a value to them, which I kind of lost in BO3 and BO4 simply because I shouldn't say this on the podcast, but I may or may not have infinite amount of them. So like now I can just kind of do whatever I want whenever I want, and it's lost that magic.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that there's no way to break the system on PC and get infinite perkaholics and stuff like that.
I'm really hoping the same. Like I've seen people discuss like, oh, are they going to have a dashboard? Are we going to be able to dashboard again? And I'm like, I just don't think that's going to work the same way, because I'm pretty confident that if you hit the gobblegum, get the gobblegum, now that it's added in your inventory in the game screen, until you actually consume it, you don't lose it. It could be a case of like, you could get the perkaholic, but you forgot to pop it that game. It's fine. You've not lost it. But then how does that work when it comes to dashboarding? Because it's like, if you've not, I guess the moment you use it, the game will count it and it will be gone. But maybe because the game's now always online, it will be literally impossible for there to be a dashboard glitch. I don't know.
You actually just gave me another idea. What happens if you pop it? Like, let's say you pop a perkaholic around 25, save and quit, come back a week later. Is your perkaholic still activated? I would assume so.
I would assume so. Like when we went to Treyarch, I think they were still like ironing out exactly what would be saved. I think the idea is they want to have literally every specific detail saved. So like even down to like how much armor you have, like before you need to pick up plates to replate, like what percentage you're at, the quest progress. I'm pretty confident there's no reason why that wouldn't absolutely be part of it. But then some other things like maybe even what HP you were at. And
that's wild.
Like gobblegums. Yeah. Again, I would like to think that if you've activated a gobblegum, it would save that state of the gobblegum in the game, but it would still count that as a use, even though the game hasn't ended.
I would think so. I mean, this is stuff that Codename Pizza, if you're watching, you're gonna have to test this out on Myth Busting Mondays, because this is save and quit is a feature in of itself that can be tested to infinity and beyond, Buzz Lightyear style. I don't really know why I said infinity. I've like never said that in my life, but for some reason I said
that's for everything, man.
Yeah, I guess so. So okay, just a couple questions left, and then I have a little lightning round. But I would really love to know some of these podcast questions. I basically, what are some things you'd like to see added or removed, or what other questions do you kind of have for the devs? Like where would you like to see this mode go in your mind?
Oh, that's such a great question. Like I think like I'm just looking down at the questions I actually wrote for Kevin, just in case some of them could be relevant questions that I could add here. But like everyone's like, oh, we want to see Turned, we want to see Grief, we want to see all these other modes. I'd like to see some expansion. I'm still not quite sure what that looks like, but like I think first and foremost, it's all great for us to want them to add all these extra things, but I think like the most important thing is just narrowing down, making sure that round base is so solid this year, because it's been 4 years without it. And I know that part of some of your questions, I think you did have some questions, may have asked them about the like open world zombie style of thing, style of game. I've seen quite a few comments where people are surprised that this game doesn't have that.
That's weird.
Some people like want it in this game, which is kind of crazy. And I'd be like, my consensus, I wouldn't say don't do it, but definitely don't do it throughout this year of Black Ops 6. Like if next year's game is, the Black Ops 2 sequel that's been like rumored, I can't feasibly see Treyarch doing another year of like 4 to 6 round-based zombies maps. So like naturally, if they were going to do an open world, it would probably slot in then. Because I can't, I mean, I could be completely wrong. And that 4 years, they've managed to make 2 years worth of round-based zombies maps to drop constantly. But like, I don't expect them to drop that many maps. Like 2 years worth.
It'd be so sick though.
It'd be so sick because I mean, Black Ops 4 proves that they can drop 4 on one day and they are all super high quality, in-depth, full Easter egg, side Easter eggs, art direction, music, everything. They clearly can do it.
So good.
It's just like, can they do that again? Yeah, I would like to see something like Grief, because I feel like Grief is like one of those only zombies game modes that we've really seen that, like, conceptually it's really good, but how it was in Black Ops 2 was clearly so unfinished, so early, so like lacking in like depth. If they really wanted to, they could really add a ton of depth to it and make it like a really purposeful mode, that there could actually be some like reason to go and play it more than like a few times for a novelty thing. And maybe that leads
I've
into...
never played it.
Oh wow, you've never played it. Wow.
I know.
That's crazy. But I know there is a big group of zombie players that love Grief and would love to see it back. I'd like to see them try something new, something different that still uses round-based zombies and the maps. But what that looks like, what that is, I just don't know. Because like I said, to me, the most important thing is just nailing the main round-based zombies gameplay and the maps. Like, solve that, then let's worry about any other potential things down the line.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the best side modes that they've had so far are probably Onslaught, Outbreak, and Gauntlets.
Ooh, Gauntlets. Yeah, I've seen a lot of love for Gauntlets recently. And I'm like, you know what? I actually think it would be cool to see them back again.
Yeah, they just need better rewards. And Onslaught was always great to just jump in and kill zombies, like have that more mindless element to it, which is why I think that if they had Onslaught, they could make multiplayer fans happy, and then they could maybe make round base a little bit more difficult. And I agree. I don't necessarily want to see an open world zombies come back this year, but I think it's going to be tough to say. I think MWZ was better than Outbreak, but I also feel like Outbreak wasn't fully realized. So it's kind of like I would like to see Outbreak developed a little bit more and have more boss fights and Easter eggs, but MWZ really had a lot of good things to it. It was a weird mode, and I was a little annoyed with the Dark Ether rifts every season, but
same.
It was pretty solid. Like there was a good gameplay loop, and but yeah.
Like I made a video about 2 weeks ago, sort of like retrospectively looking at Modern Warfare Zombies. It went through like the timeline of like every season, what content we got, the schematics, how it was perceived, and all that sort of thing. And like when I went to see Black Ops 6 before it was revealed in June at Treyarch, I said to Kevin, like, you know, I actually really liked Modern Warfare Zombies. I didn't expect it to be anywhere near as fun as it was. And considering what time frames they may or may not have had, I actually think they did a really good job. And I do think that style of game play can exist alongside round-based. But I do agree with you. I feel like Outbreak was one thing. Modern Warfare Zombies was very different in the fact that Outbreak was contained to like a single objective as a round, and you were progressing through rounds of objectives, whilst Modern Warfare Zombies just this complete open world. And clearly it was more derived from DMZ than anything else. But I do think like if there was some way to like alien hybrid both of those things, then it could actually be pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Like the concept of open world with 24 players, like I was like, imagine if Treyarch had more time to really zombie that mode to be very Black Ops-esque in terms of the map being distinctly different. If it was like, imagine if it was like a Blackout 2 style map where every POI and main part was just this crazy like blend of old zombies maps that all existed in this one massive world. Like you had like transit with the bus going around it.
I know.
It would actually be really cool. And
I would love that.
Like it doesn't even need to be something that like pushes the story along and explains like another section of Dark Ether. It could just be like its own contained separate thing.
Yeah.
Where all these old maps now just exist in this weird world on this huge map, and you could do all that cool stuff. Like, yeah. I'm just going on a tangent, but I think that would actually be really cool.
Yeah, I want them to have a space where they can just make something that's good. Not everything else always has to connect to the story. Like you can just make cool stuff that's just a great game mode. But do you have any other questions that you on the podcast list that you wanted to touch on?
Ooh, I mean, I've got quite a lot. I asked about. Well, I didn't ask. I didn't get the chance. But some of the questions, just in case people, listening, watching, be like, "Damn, these are good questions." Maybe keep them in your head, and if there's a place where they can be submitted after launch or for another COD pod. Questions were like, are there any like LTMs coming to round-based zombies? Because I know they they delved into that in Cold War. Could be argued if they were worthy, or even like modes that people played more than once, like Cranked. On concept, pretty cool, but does that really need to be there? Who knows? I really wanted to ask if the game had been built with a super Easter egg in mind.
Oh, that would have been an awesome question.
Yeah, as Black Ops 4 originally was, and Cold War got a super Easter egg-esque thing in year 2, but I just felt they wouldn't answer that, because if they did, there could be crazy expectations, and if things didn't seem like they were connected in that way of super Easter egg, I don't know, but that still could happen, and I think it's because Lee Ross tweeted or maybe replied about how IW's super Easter egg was like the best zombie super Easter egg that's ever been done, and to this day still is. And I think Kevin replied saying like
he did,
one day I really hope to be able to like follow in your footsteps, sort of thing. So I'm curious what that could have meant. Any high round rewards that could incentivize going for consistent round 100s?
That would have been a good question. And that actually you mentioned a while ago about Liberty Falls being a little bit easier on the high round front. They say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Chopper was telling me this too. Didn't they say that high rounds are going to be more difficult and there's going to be more things like thrown at us? Or I could have sworn they said something like that, but then after seeing Liberty Falls, I was like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're definitely onto something. Like there was a Q&A section at Treyarch. I'm just actually looking through the questions now because someone did specifically ask. Someone asked if there would be any rewards for high rounds because they said in Classified there was an Easter egg at round 150. And they said perhaps too early to say. They can't really speak for quests at this point, but they do have calling card challenges, Dark Ops, and Dark Ops have hidden criteria. We'll leave it at that. So that's assuming one of them is going to be related to high rounds. But no, I completely agree that like I'm pretty sure they did say that the high rounds would be harder. But again, from what you saw from Liberty Falls, it's hard to really see if that's the case. Like when we went, they did say that they were trying to figure out different ways to make the high rounds harder. And it wasn't just a case of like, we're adding super sprinters at 55 and then that's it. They were apparently still trying to work on stuff that something that you could ease into it and that could ramp up a little bit better, but they can't really talk about it at that point. I said they're still looking at what dials they want to turn up. They said it will get harder and it will be more difficult to get to round 100 this time around. And then some of the other factors that they believe will make it harder is that there's now quality of death where now you're limited in how many self-revives you can craft solo and co-op.
I mean, that's true.
Which is big.
That's definitely true.
And also the weapon skills aren't there, so you're not straight buffed by a massive percentage the moment the game starts. And then some augments like Deadshot focus on increasing critical damage. So it's not like some of those skills are completely gone, but they're just not as overpowered, and not everyone will have those because they might choose something else due to their play style. So they said some of the major augments will take some of the tier 5 upgrade forms, but now you can only have one of them rather than having all of those bonuses. Things will feel less powerful overall. So it's just going to really be a case of like, we'll see how it feels.
Interesting. I mean, I've been playing Cold War without any upgrades.
Oh, right.
And the game is much more difficult. And I could see having a mix be nice. And that was one of the Cold War's biggest downfalls, was like you couldn't turn off any of that stuff once you unlocked it. If they had the ability to switch things on and off, I think it would have given a lot more variety and a challenge.
100% agree.
Well, I I just have like a couple quick questions left, and then a little lightning round.
Sure.
And then I'll let you free. I appreciate you hanging out with me, man. I really do. This is it's a little surreal. I've been a fan of yours for quite a long time, and so it's interesting that you're here on the show. So I really do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that, and just a quick one. Like, I was very happy to be on this podcast because I really enjoy your content, and I also really respect your takes and your opinions and point of view on stuff. It's very refreshing and different to most of the things that I see spoken about zombies, and like the retrospective, especially on like the Black Ops 4 stuff. Like, I'm not even joking here. Like, I'll get into bed, get my iPad up, and I'll watch one of them if I see one pop up, and I'm just like, yeah, so well made. So I was like, I'm more than happy to jump on and talk to you because I know that you've got such a tuned brain in certain parts of zombies that I'm just more than happy to sit and talk about. So,
oh, dude,
both ways, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, man. Well, that kind of pushes us into the final era of the questions, and I guess these are just kind of quick answers, just kind of off the cuff, whatever comes to your heart. And so, what zombies map do you dislike the most?
Oh man! All right, is this Treyarch or is this Universal?
Whatever you want.
Ooh, There's not a lot of maps that I distinctly hate. Or even go as far as saying that word, dislike the most. Probably have to be the Darkest Shore, or maybe most of those maps. Like, I can appreciate that there is some really cool art design and nuance in World War II Zombies. I love the Final Reich, but I just feel after that, the DLC season, it just wasn't for me, and especially Darkest Shore.
That's really funny. I played Darkest Shore for the first time in a while, and I was kind of like, for just the Easter egg, I was like, it's all right, but it has like nothing outside of that. It's pretty bare bones.
Yeah.
All right. So besides Treyarch, who is the best zombies developer? And who would you like to see take another crack at zombies again if they could?
Ooh, I think that's a pretty easy one for me. I'm going to say Infinity Ward. Infinite Warfare Zombies. I think like the thing that's a shame at the time is like we just came off the back of a year of like peak Treyarch Zombies with this like intense, incredible story that's quite dark and deep and, multi-universal across just all sorts of the most incredible landscapes and maps ever. And then we go to like something like that, which is kind of like goofy 80s, not necessarily taking itself too seriously. It was very polarizing going from that to that. But like when you reflect upon it now, everything about that game, it shouldn't have worked, but the zombies just works so well. And there's just so much character and there's so much personality. And you can tell that it was crafted with pure passion and love and care. And it didn't necessarily end on a massive high in terms of the story, but like, dang, they tried. And not every DLC map was a straight 10 out of 10, but like everything they did was 100% in the interests of like trying to make the zombies community as happy as possible. And I think they nailed it, considering that was their very first time ever making zombies. The Easter eggs were difficult but fun. The wonder weapons were really creative, fun. All the maps were different, all had their own unique vibes. I would love to see them have another go at it again. And it's funny as well when you compare like the game that was part of. Again, that shouldn't have worked. Like Infinite Warfare had so much hate, this futuristic game with jetpacks, and no one really liked any of that. But then you just had this, which almost didn't, it almost could have not even been part of Infinite Warfare. It's just been a completely separate game, but I think it really worked. And I think now it's been a long time, you can retrospectively look back and be like, dang, I would actually love to have another year of zombies that was like that, where it's just really fun and it's not taking itself too seriously. And yeah, like, I don't know if everyone watching agrees. They might pick someone else, but I would love to see Infinite Warfare Zombies 2, but it's never going to happen, which is a shame.
I know it never will, because like Lee Ross is working on or he's working on some other military sim game, and Brian Bright, I don't even know what he's doing anymore.
I think he's retired now. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, they really did make a great mode, and that whole era from, I mean, I guess you could say like BO2 through Black Ops 4, just like so many great maps from. I mean, I know World War II is a bit of a weird one, but it did have some good Easter egg quests. Like Shadow Throne was good, and Final Reich was good, and then Infinite Warfare was great. I mean,
yeah,
that was a great time to be a Zombies fan.
Maybe if I reflect back, I might maybe change my answer to one of the Exo Zombies maps, because I don't think Exo Zombies was particularly great. Like Burger Town was pretty bad, and I don't necessarily think the other DLC maps they're not worse, but they're not necessarily that much better. But I still think like some of those were fun, and even the fact that we even got zombies and they tried, although funnily enough, that's more, I think Raven Software made the DLC for Exo Zombies. It wasn't necessarily like a Sledgehammer Games zombies mode.
Yeah, that was a weird one too. And funnily enough, when I was saying earlier how I got back into zombies at BO3, I didn't understand that different devs made different games. I was just like, there was just all these Call of Duties at the store, and I was like, I haven't played this in a while. So I bought Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3 at the same day. Ooh. And I had no idea what the hell was going on. And I started playing Advanced Warfare first, and I started playing Exo Zombies, and I was like, man, Zombies has changed quite a bit since I've played it in 2008. And like I was saying, my buddy who played with me, he's like, this just doesn't feel right. He's like, isn't there a studio that makes zombies, like they have all these old maps like in the trenches in World War II or World War One, or isn't that when Origins takes place, World War One?
Yeah, World War One.
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
And like a town underground, and I was like, bro, I have no idea. So then we put in Black Ops 3, and that's how I discovered Shadows. So it's funny that Exo is what brought me back.
That's wild. It brought you back and made you think, hang on a minute, surely there's better zombies than this.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's just get into the lightning round here. So these are just like even quicker answers. So perk limit versus no perk limit.
Oh, I think it's controversial if you say no perk limit, because without one, it's like, well, there's no reason to make decisions on what you should and shouldn't have.
I know.
So I'm actually going to say perk limit, because I want that decision making back. And if you don't want that decision making, well, BO6 has perkaholic anyway.
That's true.
I don't know.
Shield versus armor.
Oh, this is a tough one as well, because there's positives to both. Man, I might actually say armor, only from the fact that if you are playing with people that are not Zombies fans, like I did with Shadows of Evil, we did not have the shield built for a long time because they don't even know where the parts are. You need to memorize the parts, you've got to build it, then you've got to repair it. At least with the armor, at least in its Cold War implementation, it's always being replenished without you having to go somewhere to, one, find the parts and build it, and two, having to replenish it that way. Comment section, please fry me if you want, but I kind of feel armor is slightly, maybe better, more convenient.
That one I was not expecting, because I mean, whenever I think about this question, my brain always goes to the Gorod Krovi shield, and I just think about how epic that was the first time I built it.
When you add in specific design shields with their own unique abilities on top, then that's where that question really changes. But if it's like a bog standard transit shield, then I'm going to say armor. But yeah, Gorod Krovi shield, or then I'm obviously going to pick shield. But
that's actually very fair. And there's probably more shields that aren't super cool.
Yeah, I mean, look at Black Ops 4. You've got the gun, but then on Voyage of Despair, you can upgrade it to an ice shield. But then who's going to do that process?
I know, it was the worst. It was not a good Easter egg.
Yeah.
All the side Easter eggs in Voyage are actually really underwhelming.
It's crazy, right? Yeah, they are very.
Yeah. All right, double tap or the weapon rarity system?
I'm going to say double tap, only because
Okay.
it's a lot easier. It's a lot more simple. I think universally everyone understands what double tap does. Rarity system doesn't give you double the fire rate. You could also argue that it's also another like thing that is just hindering your progress in how strong you can get. But then the rarity system goes even more complexity in talking about how viable weapons are when you get them later on in the game rather than right at the start, because the rarities of them change. But I think I'll stick with double tap just because even for newer players, some of them don't even know a rarity system exists. So they will never
That was
upgrade.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll never upgrade their weapon. They don't realize that they can get a rarer weapon by buying it.
Yeah, when you mentioned that in the when you were saying you were playing with other people in Terminus, and that kind of was weird to me. Like they didn't realize that in their maybe Warzone players or multiplayer players. Well, I guess there's no weapon rarity in multiplayer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting. All right, what's your favorite consumable system? And this is like Fate and Fortune cards, elixirs, gobblegums. Maybe you could even talk about BO6 if you want, since you've actually used it.
Yeah. Ooh, I would say my fave consumable system is Black Ops 3, only because the fact that you have a random choice of what you're going to get, and you have to make that selection before you go in. I still think that's really good. Black Ops 6 may one day overthrow that opinion simply from the fact that you can now hold up to 3 gobblegums at once, be able to choose which ones you want to activate. If you want to have 3 active at once, that's pretty huge. I'm not sure if my memory is just terrible or there isn't any other zombies game that lets you do that. Does Black Ops 4 let you? Maybe it does.
I don't know. Well, no, not really, because when you activate something, all of the elixirs go on a cooldown.
That's true.
So you have to wait a second. And then if you activate another one, I think it'll override the current one. And Infinite Warfare, I don't think you can activate. No, you can actually. Infinite Warfare, you can have like 3 or 4 cards active at the same time.
Oh, wow. Okay, so maybe Treyarch were inspired by that when it comes to Black Ops 6.
Just not very overpowered.
I still think BO3, only because another thing that we've not even spoken about that they might have updated is like, you could argue that it is a little bit clumsy having to cycle through the gums in the HUD the way they've got it set up right now. It's all like D-pad button presses. Also just the way that it's presented kind of looks a bit...
It's a little strange. It looks like score streaks.
Yeah, it definitely looks like score streaks. So yeah, I'm going to say for that, BO3.
And it's in the fact that it looks like score streaks actually kind of triggered in my mind that that's what they are. And I never really thought about it like that in BO3, because they did up until really Cold War. And I'm not trying to like crap on Cold War, but up until that game, I never realized how good of a job Treyarch did at repackaging multiplayer or campaign ideas and putting them into zombies and making them feel unique. But now you can really see the connection in systems. But yeah, so what other mode are you excited for aside from zombies in BO6? Like, you're going to jump into campaign or multiplayer first? Like, aside from zombies, like what's your go-to?
This year is honestly, it's going to be campaign. Like, I am really sad that there's no early access for it, because if there was, I would be playing the heck out of it. I probably would finish it like 3 or 4 times. I really like, when there's been down years for zombies, for covering Call of Duty games on my channel anyway, I've never really focused on campaign. But over the last few years, I've really sort of focused and realized that not only am I interested in them, but quite a lot of other people are interested in watching videos on them. But this year, because there is no early access, like, I can't play the campaign straight away, which is really sad, because like, obviously we're quite biased. Maybe we both share this opinion, but the Black Ops series is just infinitely more interesting to me than the Modern Warfare series.
It is.
Or any other
100%
Call of Duty franchise, and especially the fact that it's not a reboot. It's still going through the same Black Ops universe timeline, and it's like sandwiched between Cold War and Black Ops 2, which is like 12 years ago. as someone that loves that campaign as well, loves all that narrative from all the way back then, like I'm so intrigued in how they're going to slot it in. The new characters that they've got, the sort of like twists with Adler being like a being like a
double agent,
like a double agent,
whatever.
yeah. And then all this stuff about is Mason actually dead in this game, like all that sort of stuff. Like I'm so intrigued on it, but I'm just sad that I probably won't play it for a few weeks. I'm just going to be so busy with zombies. But yeah, campaign easily. Multiplayer, I also think is actually pretty good this year. And I had a lot of fun with the beta. Like I didn't want to put it down, but I feel like I always have that sort of honeymoon period every year with COD multiplayer. And then when it actually comes out, I'm like, actually, it's not that good.
I know. Every time the beta comes out, I'm like, I'm playing multiplayer this year. I'm going to grind. I'm going to get the camos. And then Zombies comes out and I never touch it. But.
Yeah, but I actually think, at least right now anyway, I think the multiplayer in Black Ops 6 is really good. But like, I'm probably 10 times more excited for campaign because I feel like I've already experienced the multiplayer at this point. Like it come out and I'm like, yeah, I've already played like 2 days of it a few months ago. So I'm like, So yeah, campaign for sure.
Same. Okay. Last question. And this is going to be the toughest one. All right. I promise. You have to eliminate a Zombies era. So either Zelensky, Blundell, or Kevin Drew's era.
Oh man. It should be illegal.
I know, it's a tough one.
Well, I mean, I'm not eliminating Blundell's era. So it's like between Zelensky and Kevin Drew. And it's like, I feel like the easy answer, the answer most people would go for is Kevin Drew. But then it's hard to really say that because we haven't finished his era. It's only had one game. I mean, technically it's had 3, but we don't really count some of them other games that are tied to it. Then if you eliminate Zelensky, you eliminate the OG of what Zombies was. And it's like, even to this day, some of the stuff I wish we could see return, like we kind of have in a way where it's more grounded in reality and grounded in like history and things that could actually be real rather than it being fantastical and all that. But some of the maps from the Zelensky era were just absolute straight bangers.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I would pick Zelensky. I would eliminate the Zelensky era.
Okay.
So just if you're feeling any pressure, I got you back. I'll take the heat. I would eliminate the Zelensky era because I think there's a lot of the maps in BO1 that I'm not exactly a fan of. So
okay, that's interesting. And I wouldn't say like every single map in BO1 is a straight 10 out of 10. There's a lot of very strong maps, less strong maps. But then also when you're considering Zelensky era, you're also considering the dumpster fire that was Black Ops 2 when it first launched.
That's
with
true.
Transit and Die Rise. And then Berry turned things around. But then there's also like a ton of dev cutting room floor stuff that Zelensky wanted to do for Black Ops 2 that was simply just too what's the word? It was just too ambitious for it to actually work. And even like Transit was too ambitious for its own good. It didn't work. All these other side modes like Grief, Turned, don't really work. There was like maybe half a dozen other modes that you wanted to put in that also probably wouldn't have worked. Ooh. I'm gonna join you on Zelensky so you can take the heat.
Okay. Fair enough.
And also, I would argue it's unfair when Kevin Drew's era hasn't finished. We can't judge the whole era when the era's not over.
I agree with you for that as well. And also, I'm kind of an Easter egg guy. So the fact that all of Cold War has, Easter eggs, and Terminus and Liberty Fallout has Easter eggs. Even Vanguard has, I don't really consider that. I guess you could. I mean, Shino Numa Reborn is actually a good map, despite the game it's on.
I would argue it's probably one of the best versions of Shino Numa that we've ever had.
I agree. It's fantastic. And so like even though the systems inside of the Kevin Drew era are not my favorite, I still think when you consider the fact that Treyarch is kind of figuring out what their identity is, or at least that's my claim, and they're kind of landing on their feet with the direction they want to go with zombies, I don't think it's fair to cast it aside, and I think there's a lot left to explore. So
I agree, and I also think that's a very nuanced and sensible take to have, because we could write off Kevin Drew's era, and who knows, BO6 could have some of the best maps we've ever seen since like BO4 or BO3. We just don't know.
We don't. And DLC 1 is somehow, crazily enough, right around the corner.
Yeah, I still can't believe that. It really makes me curious how many maps they're going to deliver this time around. Is it just 4 maps or is it more?
Chopper thinks that they're going to, like, he said it on his podcast, but he thinks that they're going to put out kind of a fast cadence. So you'll have launch DLC 1, maybe we'll get the DLC 2 in early spring or like, I don't know, February or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but then he thinks they're going to slow down after that. And I just hope that's not the case, because they are talking about round base is going to get more support than it ever has before. They're saying it's going to get seasonal support. They're really listening to the like our feedback on atmosphere and, you know, the HUD. And it really just seems like they really want to make round base absolutely sick. So
I agree. Like,
we'll see.
It's the priority. And it's the only thing that they have to work on this year. So like, just considering that compared to Cold War, like it just sounds like everything's lining up, but we're just going to have to wait and see.
I know. Fingers crossed. Well, John, I really do. Like I said, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. You've been a fantastic guest. This was a really good conversation. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me on, man. It's just fun to chat zombies, especially with like-minded people like yourself.
Agreed. Well, everybody, make sure to spam the comments with support for Mr. Dalek JD. He's an icon in the zombies community. We'll be signing off now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.